What do you do when you pray and you have faith and still God doesn't answer your prayers? Hey, I'm Kyle Chastain from Aspire Church. Unmet expectations are our greatest source of disappointment and unhappiness. You thought something was going to work out one way and it turned out to work out another way. You expected this and you got that. Maybe it was in a job. Maybe it was in a relationship. Maybe somebody let you down or stabbed you in the back. Maybe God disappointed you because He didn't answer a prayer the way that you thought He would. At any rate, you had hoped and expected one thing to happen, and another thing is actually what ended up happening. So what do? Do you give up? Do you throw up your hands and surrender? Do you blame somebody else? Do you play the victim and say, well, the deck was stacked against me? The system doesn't work for me? Life is so unfair. I was treated unfairly. Most of us go through life as a prisoner of our expectations. Now, there are two ways that we can deal with expectations. Number one, we can be their prisoner. When you're a prisoner of your expectations and things don't work out the way that you had hoped or expected, then you're just going to throw up your hands and quit or blame other people. Or you can be the warden of your expectations. The warden is free. The warden makes expectations their prisoner. The warden is able to control their own expectations. You have to be able to manage your expectations, or they will manage you and they'll ultimately lead you to disappointment and bitterness and failure. There's a story in John 11 that I love. It's about the resurrection of Lazarus. And Jesus is living in a town near where Lazarus is, or he's staying in a town. And some of Lazarus' friends come and say, Jesus, your friend Lazarus is very sick and he's about to die. And Jesus says, no, Lazarus' sickness is not going to end in death. And then Lazarus died. Some prediction, Jesus, right? Well, then Jesus decides that it's time to go to Lazarus now that he's dead and apparently can't do anything. So as Jesus is approaching, he's met by Lazarus' sister, Mary. And I want to read to you what Mary said to Jesus when she saw him coming. This is from John chapter 11, verses 20 to 22. When Martha got word that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed in the house. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now, I know that God will give you whatever you ask. See, when Mary comes to Jesus, she's not coming with some grand theological claim about who Jesus is. She's disappointed in Jesus. She says, Jesus, if you had just been here, my brother would still be alive. You could have healed him. And you know what? I don't think that it's reading too much into the text to say, Mary probably thought, Jesus, I'm disappointed in you because I expected you to come. I expected you to heal my brother the way that you've healed other people who were sick, and you didn't come. You let me down. But here's the thing. Mary did not allow her expectations to rule over her. She wasn't a prisoner of her expectations. Because if you read verse 22, Mary says, even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask. It's okay to be disappointed. It's not okay to let that disappointment rule over you. It's okay to be disappointed in God, but it's not okay to let that disappointment rule and command your entire life. I want to share something with you that I've been learning, and I think it'll help you. It's good to expect God to move on your behalf, but it's not okay to put your expectations on how God will move. I can expect God to move for me. That's faith. And the Bible says that we can't please God without faith. But I should not put any expectations on how God will move because that's entirely up to Him. If you read throughout the Gospels, you'll see where Jesus performed the same miracle multiple times on different people. He healed more than one sick person. He gave more than one deaf person their hearing. He gave more than one blind person their sight. But if you look closely, you notice that He didn't do it the same way twice. Where I tend to get in trouble is when I look at somebody else's life or somebody else's situation and I see how God worked for them and I say, oh, God can do the same thing for me. And that's true, but the problem comes when I start to expect God to work exactly in my life in the way that He did in somebody else's. Because it's just not going to happen. My situation is different. My life is different. So I may be looking at somebody's marriage or somebody else's finances or somebody else's church, and you've probably done the same thing. And maybe you've seen how God has worked in that situation. Don't expect God to work in exactly the same way with exactly the same methods, because He can use any number of methods to achieve the same results. But when we put our expectations on exactly how God will move, if He doesn't move in that way, then it disappoints us. And it causes a crisis in faith and all kinds of other things. If Jesus had healed Lazarus before He died, He never would have given the people around Him and His followers any reason to deepen their faith in Him. Jesus had already proven that He could heal sick people. He had already proven that He could do miracles or signs, as John calls them. So why would He go to Lazarus and heal him while he is sick, just to show people that He could do it? You know what's interesting is that this is the very last sign that Jesus performed before He was crucified. The very next miracle or sign that He would do would be to raise from the dead. And I don't think that it's a coincidence that before He died and was resurrected, the last sign that He performed was to resurrect someone else, to prove that God's power had the ability to raise the dead. It wouldn't have made any sense for Jesus to have gone to Lazarus and heal him while he was sick. He had to show God's power. Maybe that's what God is doing in your life. Maybe you're expecting Him to move in a specific way, but He wants to move in another way. Everybody experiences disappointment. Everybody experiences setback. The question is, how will you handle it when things don't work out the way that you planned? Will you be a prisoner of your expectations and let them manage you, or will you be a warden and manage your expectations? Now, I'm not saying set the bar low and don't have high expectations so that you're never disappointed and you're never hurt. That's stupid and it's not realistic. I'm saying don't buy into one single path so much that when it doesn't work out, you're devastated or you want to give up. The road to failure is paved with unmet expectations, because unmet expectations lead to disappointment. Disappointment leads to bitterness and pain, which leads to throwing up your hands in surrender, and not in a good way. The next time you think God has disappointed you because He didn't move in the way that you thought He should, or life didn't go the way that you thought that it should go or the way that you had it planned, maybe it's not so much that God didn't want to move for you or refuse to listen to your prayers, as much as it is that God wanted you to take another route, and this is His way of showing you. Don't be a prisoner of your expectations. If you found this helpful, please like it and share it on social media. You can also find more great content like this at www.aspirechurch.org, and you can follow us across social media at aspirechurch.org.